There we go. That way I can share this on the inner circle for everybody. Artificial sweeteners was what was on topic for last week. And I did some personal experimentation, and I don't know, Cara, if this was psychosomatic or not, but I usually have Splenda in my coffee in the morning. And so I tried just to do it with my almond creamer that's unsweetened and no Splenda, right? And I can tell you that the days that I did not put Splenda in my coffee, my appetite was far different.
Lower or higher?
Lower, absolutely. You were talking about how you still, when you use artificial sweeteners, it still stimulates your palate for sweetness.
Right.
And so, like I said, you know, that's just a personal kind of, I don't know what it could be psychosomatic.
Right.
I thought my appetite would be lower, therefore it was. Either way, within a few days, I forgot and just started putting the Splenda in because it's so second nature. So my next step is just get the Splenda out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're half asleep in the morning. You know, you just have been
it's all
whatever your normal is. Like,
exactly.
But now it tastes so good, I'm not going to pour it out. Of course not.
But if it's not there, you can't do it.
Did anybody else have any experiences with artificial sweeteners last week?
Well, I'm trying to change my habits a little bit with that. Since I retired in February, so I've been home, and then the COVID thing broke out. For the past couple of years, I really enjoy my cup of tea. And of course, I'd work all day and I didn't really have access to tea. So I had a cup of tea in the morning, you know, a cup, probably 12 to 16 ounces. And then a nice cup of tea in the evening. But when I retired and we're stuck at home, I've been having lots of tea. You know, the 12 to 16 ounce cup, 6-8 times a day, which, you know, I didn't really see a problem with, except that I use sweet and low all the time. So I was using 2 sweet and low per those big cups. And after hearing about artificial sweeteners and honey, I thought to myself, why am I drinking so much tea? I mean, I used to have 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, and now I'm having like 8. So I decided to stop doing that. And I'm a big water drinker anyway, but obviously I drink more water now because I'm not having the tea. So I'm cutting out all that sweet and low. And then for the morning and I'm not even really having tea in the evening anymore, but I will if I really want to. But I'm going to use the honey because for 2 cups of tea a day, that many calories isn't going to kill me. And so it made me have a realization of my overindulgence in tea.
Herbal or caffeinated?
Both. I tried to go all decaf because after my gallbladder surgery, they didn't recommend any caffeine. So I stayed away from it for a long time, but then I was having a period where I was really tired and I just decided to have a caffeinated tea in the morning. But I can go either way with it now. Mostly decaffeinated herbal.
Cara, caffeine would be a good subject to do in the future.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
There's
because that's all the caffeine I use. I don't,
Oh, okay.
drink that. What's that stuff that Alex drinks? I don't drink coffee. I don't drink
the energy drinks. Does he drink?
Yeah, the energy drinks.
Oh, okay. I didn't know he did, but yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah, he's kind of a rock star. Allison, what about you? How's things going? What have you been experimenting with?
So I don't use artificial sweeteners at all. I never have because the taste is funky to me. So that fortunately, of all the things that I have to deal with, that is not one of them, which is good. The thing that I've been doing, and I started this a little bit before we got going on this session, is I'm using this mindfulness app called Eat Right Now, which is it's by a professor at one of the big universities and who studies the brain and the psychology of addiction. And it got started with people who were trying to quit smoking. And so it's really, for me, been very powerful. I certainly haven't mastered it in any way, but it is about riding out your cravings and some of the things, Cara, you were talking about. So using really getting connected with your body reactions, understanding that, really learning mindfulness, which is something I've wanted to do anyway, right? And using it to kind of get around the emotional eating, which is that's my issue. My issue is the emotional eating and pure sugar. I mean, just pure sugar. None of this too many calories or too much added sugar in a yogurt. Nope, I go straight for the peanut M&Ms. So
good choice.
Yeah, exactly. So what I saw this week as I was doing that and kind of thinking about everything we've been talking about, what I noticed is when I do eat sugar, there's an immediate, like 20 minutes later, just total crash of my body. And that was helpful actually, because it was showing me, okay, here's the direct linkage between the two.
It's actually a benefit that you're eating candy, because you
Yes.
can feel that full reaction versus someone who's maybe it's going in with a full meal and it's just a too much added sugar. Like you don't have that same crash. Did it make you hungry later?
You know, that's it. I can't say it did or it didn't, but I like crash, like had to lay down and take a nap crash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No. Well, good. That's our topic today. In addition to kind of wrapping it up with you know, how to maintain these habits that we're working on.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to, I think Cara and I are definitely want to continue to address emotional eating and mindfulness.
Yeah, that's a big.
Because it's the scientific base for mindfulness right now is so strong that even psychologists and psychologists are using it sometimes instead of some of the more traditional techniques to deal with habit change or behavior, getting just as good results as maybe cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that. So it's something that we can all work on together. It doesn't require a degree to learn. It's really about learning your own body and making better decisions that are more rational. So, Cara, I'm going to put it over to you, and then I'm going to mute everyone until the end, but feel free to unmute if you have a question, especially since it's a small group. Cara, can you go ahead and share your screen?
Yep. Okay, can everybody see the slideshow?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Okay. We are going to touch on a lot of different things today. And I hope it's doesn't seem scattered, but there are just a lot of, a couple of follow-up things and then a little bit of, you know, talking about long-term strategies and dealing with that emotional eating and peer pressure. So there were some things though that I wanted to follow up on from last week.
Can I just interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
Can you press the present button so we can see the full screen?
Did that do it? No.
That's okay. I mean, I guess we can all see it all right.
Well, is it looking tiny?
Well, we just see your view with the bars on the side.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Up at the top.
I only see Cara.
Oh,
Okay, good. I'll fix that. I'll fix the only seeing Cara part.
mm,
What about now, Patty?
Now I only see you.
Go
I did
ahead.
see her.
On your
I did
view
see her
option?
screen, but it
Okay.
went away.
Okay, good. All right, let me fix that then. How about now, Patty?
Nope.
What? That's so weird.
There's something on my screen that says switch to screen share.
No, you don't want to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I see Cara.
Um,
Beautiful Cara.
No. No, we don't want to see me. You want me to stop sharing and start over again, Kelly?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so share screen. Share. Okay. Can you see it now?
Patty?
I can see the screen, yes.
Okay, good. Allison and Lisa, can you see the screen? I'm going to assume that's a yes. All right. Okay, let's begin.
Okay. All right, I hope. Okay. All right, so I want to first go over some things that Patty, I think, had asked the question about normal glucose levels, and I had said 120. Well, 120 is actually for non-fasting. So I just wanted to include these. I know this will be posted on the Inner Circle. And just so you have the ranges of normal fasting glucose versus pre-diabetic and diabetic, and then also for non-fasting. And I did want to touch also on the hemoglobin A1c is another measure that is used a lot, and I think it's more focused on if a person is actually being treated for diabetes, because it gives their healthcare person a good view of whether or not they're staying on their medicine and how well their medicine's working, because it gives an average of basically how sticky your blood is over the past 2 to 3 months. So if someone's regulating, sticking to their medicine well, then they should be less than 7 if they're diabetic and receiving treatment. So that's another one to focus on, or that practitioners like to focus on, and just to be aware of what it actually is. It gives a more long-range view than, just a snapshot of like your glucose on that day. And the other thing the last thing I wanted to touch on from last week, and actually Allison and Kelly, this was perfect lead into this, is to pay attention when you are feeling hungry or tired and experiment with switching your food choices. And if, like Allison, you knew that you ate the peanut M&Ms and then you got tired, it could be something more subtle. Like if you have a banana every day at lunch and you tend to like ripe bananas and then you're tired 2 hours later, or, your energy dips, you might want to switch that up. You might want to have something else other than a banana and just see how it affects you, because everybody's different. And, but if you notice the same pattern over and over and you tend to eat the same thing over and over, that's what you need to pay attention to and just switch it up. And it's a good way to experiment and listen to your own body. And I just added this in here, that including a protein and a fat at every meal, those are really good guidelines for maintaining that constant blood sugar level. So just an overview, we're going to go into more of these throughout the presentation. Some long-term healthy eating strategies are, first of all, to, like I said, avoid drinking your calories. Avoid high-calorie sugary drinks, soda, lemonade. We're going to touch a little bit on alcoholic drinks because we haven't really gotten into that yet. Healthy fat and protein at every meal, again. I wanted to mention quinoa only because it was, quinoa was like really, really popular a few years ago. It's still a really good source of protein. The thing with quinoa is you want to make sure you really, really rinse it before you cook it, because if you don't, it can taste very bitter. But it's a kind of a nice light protein source that you can mix in with just about anything. Include a variety of vegetables, whole grains, and fruits. We're going to talk a little bit about fermented foods. Make sure you drink water. And the mindset that we need to try to develop is that eating all these different foods is we're nourishing our bodies. We're not punishing our bodies. We're not eating things we don't like because they're healthy. Like if you really don't like, a food that gets all the buzz as being healthy, like kale or something, then don't eat it, because there are so many other things out there that are just as good and you might actually like them. So, you can really enjoy good, healthy food. It doesn't have to be a chore. And I know it takes a while to get to that mindset, but that's where we want to be. Like we're helping ourselves get stronger and happier and more positive, not we're eating these awful foods because somebody said they were healthy. Okay. I did want to touch on alcoholic drinks, like I said. Now, most alcohol in its pure form, like whiskey, vodka, does not contain added sugars. Wine contains residual sugars just because of how it's made. It's not added. There are certain, like maybe cheaper brands of wine that might have added sugar. It's the mixed drinks that you really want to be careful of, because it's the mixer that will have the added sugar and the calories, like pina colada, margarita mix. Those are generally pretty high in sugar. Bloody Mary does have a fair amount of sugar as well. So better choices for mixers are like club soda, seltzer, sparkling mineral water, because those have nothing. They have no sugar, no calories. Tonic water does have, I think, maybe 120 calories or so per serving. So when when things get back to normal and we're in situations where, you want to enjoy a drink, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that, you can make, a lower sugar or a no sugar choice by kind of sticking with these guidelines. And then also, calories, like I said about drinking your calories, this is just a little chart that shows some of the calorie counts of just even a shot of different kinds of liquor. Just be mindful of what you're having. Like good choices are, like maybe some sparkling water, vodka, a little splash of lime juice, something like that you can sip at, whatever event you're at, that you're not going to just have like one after the other. Again, things to keep in mind, because, like when we're together in a social setting, sometimes it's easy to forget. And, I'm not saying we're going to go out and get drunk or anything, but these are just added calories that, like you can control the calories in what you're drinking, and then just be able to enjoy, the food or the appetizers or whatever else might be out there. And NIH actually has some really good resources. They have some little charts on their website where you can put in, you have calorie counters for alcoholic beverages, and then like if you have a certain mixed drink that you like, you can put in the ingredients. It'll give you a calorie count. It's just stuff to be aware of. And actually, just a side note, if you do go on NIH's website, they have a ton of really good up-to-date information. I mean, a lot of it right now is about COVID, but there are so many other resources that you can get on and learn about on their website.
Before you move from alcohol,
yes,
I wanted to address the effect that alcohol has on blood sugar. And this is just something to note, especially when, we're considering our cravings, and we're considering things that lead to cravings and overeating. So even if you have a very dry wine, or, a very, I don't know, gin and soda water, right? No sugar, no sugar at all in the actual alcohol. I think a lot of people don't realize that when you consume alcohol, it does release insulin. And then that insulin can create a drop in blood sugar. So especially for people that are already sensitive to blood sugar dysregulation, like if you've ever experienced hypoglycemia, when you get the shakes, when you don't go a long time with eating, you can get a similar effect, especially if you consume alcohol on an empty stomach. And so the reason why I bring this up is because, especially in our youth, a lot of times we will skip maybe dinner or skip the appetizers and just have the drink with friends. And then two things happen. Again, it's not the calories, it's not the spike in blood sugar, but pay attention, because as your blood sugar drops, it will stimulate carb cravings, because your body is looking for that. So it's a double whammy, because you're experiencing carb cravings because your body has this low blood sugar, and you've just reduced your inhibitions, right? And so your willpower is reduced as a result of the alcohol being on board. And so you'll find that often what would have just been a drink to end the night ends up being a drink and then a bowl of ice cream later, or a whole thing of ice cream. So again, another thing to pay attention, that's what happens in your body when you consume alcohol, especially on an empty stomach. And again, it doesn't happen to everyone. I know a lot of people that can drink all day and not eat anything. But some people are really affected by that drop in blood sugar, and it stimulates their cravings.
Yeah, really, those are really good points. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, wanted to touch on fermented foods. There's a lot of research that links consumption of fermented foods to reduce sugar cravings, and it's not really apparent exactly why it happens, but the theory is that the fermented foods feed the healthy gut bacteria, and the more in balance your gut bacteria is, the less you want to, the less you crave foods that you shouldn't have, because when everything's in balance and you're feeling good, you're not going to go after those, the less desirable foods like the sugary foods. So some things, or some examples of fermented foods, are kimchi, kombucha, kefir, miso, and sauerkraut. You can buy all of those pre-made. You can also make your own, which is really a lot of fun. The fermentation people used to ferment food to preserve it. And in that preservation process, the healthy bacteria is created. So that's where this all came from. If you have any interest at all in learning how to do this, or just kind of playing around with it, it's a lot of fun for kids. There's a couple of books that I recommend. Monica Corrado she's a nutrition educator. She wrote a book called Grandmother's Kitchen, and it's a little spiral bound book, but it's really chock full of all kinds of interesting information. Just take some of what she says with a grain of salt. She's very into the GAPS diet, which is gut and psychology syndrome. It's a theory that you can basically heal a lot of mental disorders by healing the gut lining. And I'm sure there's a huge connection between gut health and mental health. However, it's not 100% science-based. So just be aware of that. But her techniques and a lot of her recipes are just amazing. And, you know, it's like I said, it's a little tiny book. It fits on your counter, but well worth looking into. And also Sandor Katz is like the expert, the guru on fermentation. And his book, I think came out probably like 7 or 8 years ago. So if you have any interest, it's a lot of fun. You don't need special equipment. You can make your own ketchup, which is really amazing. You don't use any sugar, and the flavor is just so much richer. There's so much depth to the flavor of making things like that than what you buy in a store. So again, it's worth a try if you want to give it a shot. And just a couple of other things I wanted to briefly touch on, just because you hear about them a lot in the news now, and we might want to do like another series on this. A lot of people talk about intermittent fasting, and I do know some people who do this, and they have experienced some benefits. If you want to go that route, check with your doctor first, because there are some health conditions that are not going to mix well with intermittent fasting. Probably the easiest one to do is the daily approach, where you just reduce your eating window to a 6 to 8 hour period. So you tell yourself, I'm only going to eat between noon and 8 p.m. or 10 and 6 or something like that. And it doesn't mean you try to cram all these calories into that. It's just that you can get up, you have coffee, and then you don't actually eat food until noon or 10, whatever works for you. And then there's another approach, the 5 to 2, where 5 days of the week you eat normally, 2 days of the week you restrict yourself to one meal, like 500, 600 calories. Going beyond that, fasting for a day or so, not really recommended, because then your body kind of thinks it's starving and starts holding on to everything. But there's a lot of research on this now, and people that I've talked to who have done it say it really helps with mental clarity, helps you feel calm. I don't know if anyone on the call has ever tried it. It would be interesting to hear your experiences if you have, but again, something to keep in mind. And then also elimination diets. These are, they're best done under the guidance of a dietitian or a nutritionist. They definitely help you really think about what you're eating. What it does is it helps you focus on foods, like trigger foods that could possibly cause discomfort or that you might have a intolerance of, like sugar. I have a list there, gluten, dairy, alcohol, etc. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can either cut everything out at once and then gradually reintroduce one at a time to see what effects it has on your body, or you can eliminate one at a time and gradually reintroduce if you want. Some people, when they do these elimination diets, they find out they feel so good that they don't reintroduce. But again, it's a good way to get to know your body a little bit. It's kind of like an experiment, but they're better done with with guidance, so that you don't deprive yourself of any essential nutrients while you're doing it.
I've had experience with coaching people through elimination diets, especially the Whole30.
Mm-hmm.
We were a Whole30 authorized partner for a little while. And again, everyone is unique and different. And so this isn't a one size fits all. But what I found the most is if people, especially about the sugar conversation, when people are not being able to get a good idea of why they can't seem to get control over their sugar cravings. Like they've tried mindfulness, they've tried getting it out of the house. Then what an elimination diet can often help them do is identify, okay, let's eliminate all the culprits for a short period of time, and then which one is the trigger? Because often, for some people, the actual meal that you had earlier is a stronger trigger for your sugar cravings than the stress that you're under. So especially once people have already kind of eliminated the stress to the extent that's possible, they have a good manage on that, they're getting enough sleep, they're drinking enough water, and yet they're trying to be mindful, but they are just cannot beat these sugar cravings. That's when I found that a lot of times I say, yeah, let's do an elimination diet, because there could be something else that I'm eating earlier that I'm unaware is having this effect. And that seemed to always be a good benefit, not as a first line of action, but definitely as one of those things that you, at the end, when you're like, all right, this, I'm trying everything else, and I'm still magnetized to the Jolly Ranchers in my cabinet, and it can work really well.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're great for sugar cravings. And also if, people are having, some weird rash or joint pain or something like that, sometimes they want to go this route first to see if it's possibly something they're eating that's causing some weird symptom. And I'm definitely not saying do this instead of going to the doctor, but it's just one, thing in our arsenal that we can try. So speaking of mindfulness, avoiding emotional eating, and this is really, it's a huge topic, but just some tips that may work. Again, everyone's different. And usually when we think about emotional eating, it's if you're bored, angry, stressed, have like an unexpected change or something you didn't think you were going to have to deal with. Sometimes it's easier to just, okay, well, I'm just going to stand here and snack while I think about it or something like that. And, those situations are, they're going to happen. They're going to come up, and you have to work on being prepared for them. So, one thing you can do is get into a habit of tracking your meals. This I know is it's a difficult habit to get into, but it really makes you aware of what you're eating. And I just think it adds like another layer of before you make a decision to eat that cake or whatever, you're like, oh, well, if you're in the habit of tracking your food, I'm going to have to write it down. I'm going to have to track it. And it kind of makes you stop and think a little bit, hesitate before. And sometimes just that little hesitation can be enough to kind of break you out of that emotional cycle you're in. So that's one method. Manage your stress, at least identify it. Where is it coming from? We cannot avoid stress in our lives. It's going to be there. We can manage our reaction to it. We can manage, knowing it's there, knowing it's going to happen, and being ready to handle it when it does happen. Again, mindfulness, are you really hungry? I know from personal experience, no, it's not usually hunger. It's, somebody does something that upsets me or, puts me in a bad position. And, so I get out the crackers or whatever and stand there and think about it. That's not hunger. So again, you want to hesitate. You want to really just take a pause and think about it. And that's what mindfulness is. It is something that, takes some effort to develop. Talk about it. There are, you can work with a nutritionist. You can talk to, your trainer about just, when these things come up. And sometimes just talking about that kind of thing, sharing that experience can help you the next time it comes up. You can get ideas from other people. And also, we know that we all do it. But when you bring it out into the open and talk about it, sometimes it just really helps to be stronger the next time you're in that situation. Keep the tempting foods out of the house, like we talked about. And really important, do not beat yourself up if it happens, because it's going to happen. Even the most well-controlled, mindful, happy Zen eaters are going to emotionally eat once in a while. And you don't want to beat yourself up, because that's not what any of this is about. Leading
Sarah, can I go back on that a little bit? I'd like to.
Certainly.
if you could indulge me for a second here. Tracking meals. So sometimes when you when people introduce to food tracking, it becomes an actual stress, and they start obsessing over the calories if they're using an app. Not everyone. Most people are not like this, but there's a few people, they start obsessing about the calories, and then it becomes overly restrictive. And I know that this isn't the kind of food tracking that you're talking about. You're really talking about tracking to create awareness, not for dieting. So there's a few ways you could do this. Sure, you could use a app like Fujicate or MyFitnessPal. The only issue with those is that it can get a little time consuming, especially if you're trying to be very, very specific with everything. Those are best used on temporary basis, either to communicate with your nutritionist or your trainer, or just really to figure out how many calories you're eating. But long term, that's a really tough thing to do every day in and out. But like you said, just keeping a journal and just writing down the label of what you ate. You know, I ate a handful of nuts. I ate, a cupcake. I came back and ate another cupcake. I had spaghetti, normal portion. That then it allows you to go back and look at what you were eating and try to figure out what days were good and what were bad days, and figure out what habits you had that might stimulate other habits. It provides that interception. So if you have to write it down before you eat it, that just creates the awareness. Another thing that works very well is people do a photo log of what they eat. So they get out their phone and they just take a picture of it. That is enough to provide yourself a little bit of accountability and tracking. So a photo food journal has worked very well for a lot of people who are trying to create awareness around eating. And also, if you're working with a nutritionist, you can send them the photos, because they'll know right away by looking at it approximately if it's the right size portion for you, and have a pretty good idea of what's in it. So there's lots of ways to track your food without the intensity that comes with a food, like a MyFitnessPal or Lose It or an app like that. Then when it comes to managing stress and mindfulness, Dr. Pamela Peeke wrote 2 very awesome books. One is Fight Fat Over 40 for women, and the other is The Hunger Fix. And in The Hunger Fix, she really goes into detail about why our brains are hardwired to get these rewards, these dopamine hits from our cravings. She also talks about cortisol and that whole cycle, the afternoon dip between 1 and 3 p.m. So she really paints a big picture for it. So I recommend that. And she's the one, and I tried to find the actual quote. She's the one that wants you to use mindfulness and intercept before you eat something. Identify what is the reward that I'm trying to get from this, and then kind of go through this line of questioning. All right, well, what happened the last time I ate this? Well, did I get that comfort or that feeling that I expected from it? And then the third thing, so those are, if you think that you'd like to learn more about the science behind food addiction, and this isn't just for obese people, this is all of us who tend to self-soothe with food, which is basically describes women. But she does talk about also chronic undereaters. So there's a rare population that when they're stressed, they actually undereat. Wish I could be that woman. But and then one other thing about mindfulness, I encourage you to approach it learning the entire genre of mindfulness, not just mindfulness around food, because it's not that narrow. You can't be mindful about food and mindless about everything else that's happening in your life. So really a holistic approach to mindfulness is gonna help if you really want to get it and understand it. And there's this course on the Great Courses app, and it's a Harvard professor. His name is Dr. Ronald Siegel. And one thing that he said recently when I was watching the course was he said that it takes 90 seconds for an impulse when it comes into your brain. If you don't cultivate it, it will pass in 90 seconds. What happens is when we cultivate the urge and keep thinking about it and keep desiring it, then every 90 seconds you're re-stimulating it. And so that was powerful for me. It was like, wow, okay, so I want to eat some chips right now. All right, yeah, I really do. Now just accept it and let it pass. 90 seconds is all that it takes to intercept an urge. And so that's kind of these little different ways that people have of saying like, oh, write it down, or oh, distract yourself, or oh, it's because this urge, it will pass. And if you can buy yourself 90 seconds every time you've got an urge, imagine what that's going to do for your habits. So not that we think that you're not going to have a craving again, but just this is one of those things where just buying a little bit of time. Will it always pass? No, but you stand a good chance. And if anybody's interested in those two doctors, I'm happy to send that information to you afterwards.
That's really interesting. The Great Courses, I think, aren't they offering like a discount now or something with the?
Oh yeah, it's $10 for a 3-month subscription.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And I'm talking, but I mean, these are learning courses. These aren't like they're entertaining if you have a scientific mind, but I mean, you're going to learn a lot. His course on mindfulness is 25, 40-minute courses with guided meditation. So highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'll say thank you. That's interesting. Cool. Okay, so moving on, the last thing that we wanted to talk about is peer pressure. And this, again, is something that we haven't had to deal with probably for a while because we haven't been in groups, but that is going to change eventually. So one point I wanted to make was to maintain perspective, and there's really two parts of this. One is that, if you're out in a group and someone says, oh, why don't you have, the cheesecake or whatever, and you say no, just keep in mind, like, I know some of us get like really upset that we disappointed that person or let them down. They probably didn't even give it a second thought. So maintain perspective that if you're going in focused on, oh, I don't want to disappoint so-and-so by not having dessert with them, there's a good chance that after you've said no, they've forgotten about it. The other thing to maintain perspective, and this is kind of the opposite, is that if it's like a once in a lifetime event, like, your grandfather's 90th birthday or something, if someone offers you cake, just take it, because that's not the time to really worry about, making a point or standing your ground or whatever. So every situation is going to be different. And, when you're with people, we want to focus on, conversation, spending time with people, not so much on the food. And that in itself can help you, turn down or make the healthier choices. That the focus is not the food itself. And something that has worked for me as far as like being with family sometimes can be more difficult than friends, I've noticed, because, especially if you're the odd one out who's all of a sudden, not eating all the really calorie rich and sugary foods. I've noticed that if I say, I don't eat that, or I don't eat that anymore, it for some reason that is gives you a little more control than saying, oh, I can't eat that, because I can't eat that sounds like, you're a victim, and then it invites questioning and, oh, well, why don't you just, have a little bit of this? But if you just say, I don't eat that anymore, end of story, I feel that it gives you a little more control in the situation. And, you know, when you're dealing with friends and family, it can be hard at first, especially if it's, you know, some kind of food that you've always enjoyed, or, you know, that you've always enjoyed together. It can take a while. It can take some practice to get into that routine of, you know, no, I'm just going to stay the course. I'm not going to do this to make someone else happy. It does get easier over time, and eventually people do stop, like, you know, it just becomes accepted. Okay, well, you know, Cara has herbal tea instead of having a drink with us, whatever, and that's just how it is. And the other thing is, it does get to the point though where, you know, at first when you're trying to maintain your healthy diet, you do start to, you know, you might feel a little bit deprived, and but eventually you'll get to the point where you don't want that food because you know how you're going to feel after you eat it. And that's where you kind of get a little disconnect with your peers, because they think you're still depriving yourself, and, oh, just treat yourself to this cake, or, you know, the ice cream or whatever. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, even if I had it, it's not really a treat because I know I'm not going to feel good afterwards. So that's when it really becomes like a lifestyle thing for you. And, you know, being the one to choose, like, you know, where we go, if it's a group of friends, or what we're going to serve for dinner. Because a lot of times, you know, and I know this happens with women a lot. Where do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know. You know, you choose. Just choose something that you know has healthy selections, because around here it's pretty easy to find something, you know, a healthy food choice. Or I think Kelly mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, that, you know, if you get foods that are separate, like, you know, a protein and, you know, a starch and a vegetable, and they're separate, that's generally going to be a healthier selection. And you can find that in most restaurants around here. But if you're somewhere, you know, maybe a different area of the country, or, you know, even a different area of Maryland, it might be a little bit hit or miss. So, you know, be the one to make the choice of where you go. And, you know, it does become a little easier. Kelly, is there anything you want to add to peer pressure?
You know, there is.
I know. Go ahead.
So, the stories that we tell ourselves about the type of person we are, that is everything on this. And I'll use my husband as an example instead of using myself. So my husband identifies as a healthy person, a police officer, a martial artist. And everything that he does, every choice that he makes, there's no choice. You know, is he going to, you know, train jujitsu 4 nights a week? It's not a decision he has to make. It's automatic, like showing up for work, like doing the right thing. And when it comes to his eating as well, it's not even a choice. If somebody's got cake there and then there's a salad, the cake isn't even on his menu, right? Mm-hmm. And so now I can relate to a lot of that as well, because I'm very similar in a lot of ways. And maybe not as extreme, but if you identify as a healthy person, like that's truly who you believe you are, there is no peer pressure, because you'll make healthy choices. When presented with a choice, your automatic choice will be the healthy one. So reframing the stories that you tell yourself about yourself, right? Even if you're not ready to say, I'm a healthy and fit person, that might be hard for you. Maybe you've got so many underlying scripts that you've written that's hard. So maybe the first step is saying, I used to be someone who made unhealthy choices. And that can pave the way for the new you. And the other thing was that once you have that, you might notice that socializing changes for you. most social occasions are toxic in so many ways, and the food is crap. There's so much drinking, so much food, and everybody feels like crap when they leave, you know? So you'll find that healthy people socialize differently, you know? Hey, instead of going out for drinks for ladies' night, it's, hey, do you want to come over and have a cup of tea? Would you like to go take a walk with me? So it sounds so simple, but you'll find that socializing changes a lot when you identify as a healthy person. The other thing is families. But you're not going to cut your family event out. You're not going to, be that person who shows up with pre-portioned Tupperware. That's not where we're not saying that. But family events they say you can choose your friends, but not your family. So I always say, if you're meeting family or even friends, bring your own, right? Don't hope there's going to be non-sugary options. Don't have temptation there. Why don't you bring your own dessert that you made, that, it's a baked fruit of some sort where you didn't add any sugar to it, and it's got the fiber, and how nutritious, and you enjoy it. So you can always bring a dish, even if they say, hey, would you like me to bring something? Oh, no, I've got it. Bring it anyway. Nobody ever got upset with someone who contributed. And if those are your types of friends, you can keep them. And then finally, in restaurant situations, maybe you can't choose. But I highly recommend you always bring your phone out, Google where you're going, and select what you're going to eat ahead of time. Once you get in there and you start smelling the smells, and it's too late. Your rational thinking is gone. So be prepared, select ahead of time. And those can all help overcome, the peer pressure. And then if they bring bread out to the table or some disgusting sugary covered appetizer, just position yourself as far away from it as possible. If they bring it to the center of the table and it's just you and two other persons, just scoot it towards them. And you'll be surprised. Just little things like that will make a huge difference. Decision made, temptation over. So that's all I have to add to that, Cara.
No, it sounds great. All really good points. So that's actually, I think we're almost out of time, but that's all I had for this presentation. So I wanted to see if anyone had questions, but real quick, I wanted to mention, as part of my full-time job, I do a lot of work with the Office of Dietary Supplements, and they have webinars every month, and it's always on. Sometimes it'll be like a really narrow scientific topic that's probably only interesting to researchers, but sometimes there's really, topics that appeal to a broader range. And the one coming up at the end of May is about conflicting and controversial health information in the media. It's given by a professor of journalism at the University of Minnesota. They're only an hour. They start at 11 a.m. and you just do it all. You just click on the webinar and you're in. If anyone would like to hear that talk, just send me your email and I'll add you to the list so that you get an invitation. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that.
Great.
And if anyone had any questions about anything we talked about today.
Cara, not about today, but how do we send our information to you?
You can just do it on Facebook.
On Messenger?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Actually, I do have a question. It may not be related to today, but to the whole series of 4, of which I missed 2 of them. But I've noticed, and I seem to have read, that after you eat a meal, there seems to be a window in which you're more likely to eat dessert than not. And it may be tied into your blood glucose levels right after you consume a meal. That I guess there's a drop before it actually rises, or there's a delay. Can you comment on that, sort of that dessert phenomenon, and how maybe to strategize to avoid it? And I guess Kelly's 90-second rule might be helpful in that regard too.
Yeah, I think so. I'm actually not aware of any specific time period after you eat.
Uh,
I do think a good strategy, especially if you're at home and, you know, there's not like everyone sitting down having cake or whatever, is to get up and brush your teeth. That's actually one of my strategies, because once you have that mini taste in your mouth, you don't want to eat anymore. I think getting up from the table, putting everything away, you know, the kitchen's closed after dinner, you're not going in and have dessert. Those are all good strategies. I think when you're in eating mode and you're sitting there eating and you haven't really experienced that feeling of fullness yet,
uh-huh.
that's probably the danger zone, when you're like, oh, something sweet would really be great right now. And, you know, you're just going to go ahead and eat it.
Right.
But as far as like an actual time period, I don't know, but I will look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else have any questions? You'll have to unmute yourself if you do. I don't think I can.
No, I'm good. This has been a great session.
Yeah, thanks, Cara. It's been a really interesting set of webinars.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, thank you all. And thank Kelly too.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
just stay in touch. We'll probably have another series starting Thursday of next week. And Cara and I are going to talk later and try to brainstorm what that should be. So if there's something specific you'd like us to, if there's something we touched on that you'd like to hear more about, I think that'll help us stay in our lane. But if there's something specific that you'd like to find out, if we can bring that up, we'll definitely do that for you. So, all right, I will post last week's today in the inner circle, and then I'll post this one later once it processes. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the inner circle.
Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Bye.
Bye.